Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to today's Kendo rant. Let's jump straight into the questions. Thanks for the video. I have a question actually. My old men belong to a dojo I practiced in previously and it was given to me as a gift. It is really old and was probably worn by many people, has a strange smell and has caused rashes to appear on my face. I ordered a Vanguard set from you. Thank you. I was wondering how I could clean and disinfect this men so that it is at least usable without being a biohazard. Okay, so obviously, like if it's causing rashes on your face and stuff, I'd be a bit considerate of that first of all. But what you need to do is, if you want to wash it, the best thing to do is do your best not to get the membuchi. That's the hard bit that connects the cage to the futon, the pad. It's usually painted red and black. Do your best not to get that wet, first of all, because that gets wet, it'll go soft, and it's not really good for it at all. So what you can do is you can get the men and you can sort of soak it in water, like in the bath or something. Make sure you get permission from whoever's bath it is, though. Don't be doing it and then getting in trouble with someone else in the household. But yeah, you can pop it in the bath, sort of with the cage facing up, the mengane facing up, and then fill it with water, essentially just to about below where the membuchi is, so that doesn't get wet. And you can soak it like that, and then you can stick your hand in and you can sort of give it a bit of a scrub and scrub the uchiwa as well, the bit that actually touches the face. You could do that as well, that's not a problem. But like I say, just do your best not to let it get too wet on the membuchi, because that's not good for it. Okay, and you could repeat that process even like 1 or 2 times, especially if it's a really old men. And you know, hopefully that should make it a bit cleaner. It'll probably need a good few days to dry out though, so bear that in mind as well. Don't do it and then think you can go to practice the next day, because it'll still be totally sodden wet. So yeah, I'd even think about giving it a week to dry out, so think about that too. Okay. Next one. Hi Andy, what kind of things do you do when you're not doing Kendo to improve your Kendo? For example, do you do weight training, and if so, what kind? I used to go down the gym quite a lot, especially when I was very competitive. I used to go to the gym when I wasn't when I wasn't at the dojo. I don't do that much these days. I just don't have time for it. I'm not really super into competition at the minute. So you know, I'm not really doing that much outside of Kendo. But one of the things I do that is super important, I have stressed an awful lot on this channel, is Mitori Geiko. I actually think that's far more important than doing any sort of weight training or cross training. It's great to do that sort of thing. And what if you do any sort of cross training, I'd recommend more so, I mean, I'm no expert on anything like this, but I'd probably recommend doing stuff that's more cardiovascular rather than too much sort of heavy weightlifting. But yeah, I mean, Mitori Geiko is like the best thing ever to do when you're not at Kendo, like watching YouTube videos and watching the best guys in the world doing Kendo and building a mental picture of what good Kendo should look like and the sort of Kendo that you'd like to emulate is far more important than any other type of training you can do outside of the dojo, in my opinion. Next one. Hi Andy, follow-up question about Nafuda, or haha Tara name, being good manners. So in the last video, just to clarify this, we talked about the actual the zekken or the Nafuda or the Tare name, whatever you want to call it, and that one of my senseis in Japan told me that it was bad manners not to wear one, and that if you forget to bring it, you should write your name on the tare with chalk, so people know who they're practicing with. So to continue, it says, when I go to the dojo in my country and stay, I play with Japanese sensei and players who I've never met, and their nafuda is all in Japanese, whereas mine is in Japanese and English. Would you say this makes having the nafuda pointless? If so, do you think it would be considered rude to ask their names? First off, no, it's not rude to ask their names. I don't see why that should be considered rude at all. If they're not going to write it in a language that you can understand, it's not, especially if it's, I mean, obviously if you're in Japan, then of course they're not going to write it in English. But you know, if you're in another country where another language is a majority language, and that language isn't written on the zekken, then sure, I think it's okay to ask their name. it is kind of a bit pointless if you think about it. I was thinking about this the other day because I've got quite a few zekken or tarenem or nafuda, whatever you want to call it, that are only written in Japanese, having lived and practiced in Japan for a long time. Most of mine actually are only in Japanese. But one of the first things I did when I came back here was have one made up with English on it. And likewise, I've got a couple like my national team tarenem, stuff like that. My national team one when I was on the national team, that just has GB, has the flag, and then it has my name in English across the bottom. And I actually wouldn't really wear that in Japan because there's people that couldn't read it. So it kind of takes away the point. So yeah, I think it's best to have both Japanese and English. And then you can wear it wherever, certainly in my situation. But yeah, I mean, whilst I'm in the UK, which is a majority English-speaking country, then I do my best to make sure that my zekken is written in English. And when I'm in Japan, I make sure I've got a zekken that's got Japanese written on it as well. Next one. Excuse me. Given the inadequacies of Japanese martial arts in modern MMA context, why do you think that such a kendo stance is correct just because several generations have been doing it that way? If anything, MMA has shown us that doing it the way it has handed down isn't correct. Okay. So obviously we're talking about the kendo stance and having to have your feet pointed forward, and I guess the question is, well, if in MMA, Japanese martial arts that do things very traditionally aren't very effective, then why shouldn't we change it in Kendo so that it becomes more, dare I say, effective? And the answer is simple. It wouldn't make it more effective within a Kendo context because Kendo is not MMA and Kendo is no use in MMA. Kendo is not about winning sword fights. I know I've had this before, and we had a little bit of a flame war going about it, but it's not about winning sword fights. Kendo is about the pursuit of yuko datotsu and the kind of the difficulties of achieving that. So yeah, the kendo stance isn't. I mean, there could probably be a way to sit and argue that it is an effective stance for genuine sword combat. I don't know. I don't know much about sword fighting, to be honest. I just know about kendo, and in the context of kendo, which is the only thing that I sort of consider, then having your feet pointing forward in the traditional kendo stance for chudan no kamae is the most effective method that I've seen so far. And it certainly has been demonstrated by the top practitioners in the world. So yeah, MMA is kind of irrelevant. It's not really about learning how to be the best sword fighter or winning the most sword fights. It's about becoming the best person you can be through your pursuit of yuko datotsu via kendo. Okay, next. Okay, so this is similar to the previous one. It says, great video as always, thank you. What is your take on strength training for Kendo? Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like I said before. The best thing I would do, like I said, I used to work out quite a lot when I was very competitive and somewhat thinner. Yeah, I think there is indeed a benefit to it. I would, like I say, personally, I think that doing the cardio is very important, but obviously as well, doing strength training is indeed an important aspect. But I'm certainly not an expert, and it's not something I'd ever think I would be prepared to give anybody advice about. Okay, next, Andy, if doing Kote, do I need to stomp? So yeah, do you need to do fumikomi when you do Kote? Short answer is yes, I'm afraid so. It's not written in the rules you have to do it. Obviously, there are situations when it's not always required to do fumikomi or the stamp. But generally, if you're doing hiki, gote, or any other hikiwaza from tsubazariai position, then yes, I think it's better to do so with the stamp or the stomp. Next one. I have two questions. Hopefully it won't be too much, not at all. I've noticed in the dojo I practice for mostly native Japanese, of which are mainly over 60, Kote strike is frowned upon. Most beginners are discouraged from using it. It's somewhat considered a lesser strike or more of a shiai strike rather than proper Kendo. What is the reason many older sensei look at Kote strike in this way? Second question, I noticed in my dojo some beginners are very concerned about winning the sparring and turning into a less stylish, more aggressive and sometimes too hard and dangerous Kendo. What is the right attitude to practice a good fight? Thank you in advance. Okay, that's really interesting because you kind of sort of led me to the answer with your second question to the first question. So the first question is about why some of the older sensei in that are obviously sort of Japanese sensei in your club kind of look down a bit on the Kote strike. Now, I think what it is probably you'll find it's not that they disregard Kote as like a lesser strike or something like that. I think what it is that they're encouraging, particularly beginners, to have a very proactive kind of attacking spirit, and most people don't do that, and they kind of hide behind these sort of choppy Kote attacks because it's scarier to attack men. They don't feel like they can make a successful attack to men, but they feel like they've got less risk. There's less riding on it if they attack Kote. So they tend to favor towards striking Kote. So, whereas that's the kind of thing that they want to discourage. What they want is you to kind of throw everything away in the concept of systemi, not care about whether you're struck or not, and make the strong, powerful men. And this is kind of a common way of teaching, and it's something I was involved in, certainly whilst I was teaching kids over in Japan. It's not that you say, no, don't hit Kote, or Kote is lesser. It's more to do with the actual intention behind the strikes in the first place. But if the one thing I definitely would say is certainly if they're encouraging you to strike men, then definitely aim for that. And what I found is in the sort of, probably in the last few years, maybe 2 years or so of living in Japan, whenever I practiced with someone who I considered a sensei, like, one of the high graded people for me, what I would often do is, in fact, I think I went almost like a year and a half, never even attacking Kote or just only attacking men against those sort of sensei, because it wasn't about, the goal of that keiko isn't just to hit and win. Yeah, of course you're trying to make the yuko tatotsu, but you have to do it in the best possible way you can. So it's through your own, you have to own the waza, you have to make sure you're creating the opportunity, it's from your own seme. Hopefully you're eliciting some kind of reaction from them, and then bam, you can hit that brilliant men. And that's what I was sort of working on for the whole time. And sometimes I even had experiences where I'd be with like a very, very skilled 8th dan sensei, for example. I can remember one instance in particular where we'd have a really, really great keiko, and then he'd say, okay, let's do the ippon shobu, and I kind of let myself, I remember hitting a kote on him, and him saying, oh, nice kote, and saying that I won. And I remember feeling that I was actually defeated because I'd attacked the kote, I'd hit the kote, and yeah, if it was the Shiai, I'd have been awarded the Kote point. But for me personally, I hadn't been able to overcome my fear of challenging his men, and instead I kind of hid behind a Kote strike, pound like this, and then I managed to hit it. And I actually felt defeated. Because by sensei, because I was unable to overcome my fear of attacking him with full systemi. So yeah, I think that's where that comes from, if that makes sense. Anyway, second question about the beginners concerned about winning the sparring and turning into less stylish, more aggressive, and sometimes. Okay, so the right attitude is, you have to practice with your best effort. And I think it's kind of linked to this first question, it's not about winning and losing, especially in jigeko, in your sparring, because there is no winner or loser. You're trying to achieve your best kendo, whilst at the same time your partner is doing the same. So yeah, you have to practice very seriously, very diligently, and you have to commit yourself 100% to the strikes. But at the same time, you have to try and remove sort of temptations or ideas of actions that are there just for you to hit a point for the sake of hitting a point, as opposed to necessarily, making the correct datotsu, yuko datotsu. So, you have to make sure that you're still having the good form, the good kikentai no ichi, and that you're attacking the good opportunities. Oh, and obviously this scales with the level that you're at. So if you're just starting, if you're just starting out, I'd be saying that what you really need to be concentrating on is like kikentai no ichi, and making sure that you're striking with kikentai no ichi, whether they hit or miss. It's not really as relevant. And then as you get more sort of developed and more skilled, then you can focus on making those strikes with kikentai no ichi at the opportunities that are correct, so that you can then make valid strikes. Okay, last one. I just ordered the Sapphire Moon Kendogi. Thank you very much. And some important things instantly popped into my brain about Indigo dye. The main point being that I've heard that traditional Indigo is an antiseptic. Has an antiseptic quality to it, and that it might be one of the reasons that it's used in Kendo equipment, as well as all sorts of other activities. In the category of other activities, traditional farmers here in Thailand use clothing dyed with indigo, and I suppose that the antiseptic aspect could have been a reason for its use in that as well. I do believe that there are 2 dyes used here, in fact, similar and blue in colour, but from slightly different plant. One is called Mahom, and the other Kram. Anyone else heard about the antiseptic qualities of indigo? Yes, you're absolutely right. One of the reasons, basically, we use the indigo or aizome in Kendo because it was traditionally it was a colour and a dye that was associated with the warriors of old, the samurai or the or whatever. I'm not a super historian, so I don't want to say something that's not true. But what the reason that it's there is because the guys in the old days, they used to wear it because they did believe. Now I don't know if it's true, because again, I'm no sort of scientist on this sort of thing, but the belief is that the indigo dye does have antiseptic qualities. It also is supposed to have the deodorizing quality, and the other one I heard is that it had kind of coagulating quality. So it kind of, if you got wounded, it would stop the blood kind of running too much. It'd help clot it up, if you know what I mean. Now, I don't know if any of that's true, but that's what I was believed by the warriors of old, and that's why they chose it, because obviously they were out on the battlefield, or they were out campaigning and at war, so they could easily get injured. They didn't have the chance to kind of take a bath and stuff like that so often, and yeah, they might get hurt, so they need that sort of antiseptic sort of qualities as well. And sort of based on that, the kind of the process of indigo dye, the aizome, has become a very important part of Japanese culture, and even today it's considered in itself its own art form, and that's why you can pay like a lot of money for a very high quality dyed garment, whether it's a kendogi and hakama, or whether you could get it for something else. It doesn't have to be a kendo thing. They use it for like the none and the kind of curtains and stuff. So yeah, it is said to have those qualities. It is certainly something that is believed, or was believed. I'm not going to sit here and say it's definitely true, because I don't know for a fact, and I'm like I say, I don't want to say that sort of thing. But I think it's a nice story, and that's even if it's not true that it has those properties. I think it's nice that we still use the indigo dye. Based on the tradition of it coming from the sort of samurai of old. So yeah, that's where I sort of sit on that, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's the end of it for today. Thank you very much for your questions. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me some more down below in the comments. That's what it's there for. Let me know what you'd like me to rant about next time. Many of those comments were from the Kendo Show Early Access group, which there's a link to in the description. Go and get in that group if you're not in it already. It's free to join, of course. course. It's a great group. You can post your questions there. I'll definitely see them. Also, it does create a bit of a discussion forum because everyone else in that group tends to chime in as well, and we get a really good discussion going. Like, share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. You know what to do there. And of course, shop at KendoStar.com because that's what keeps the lights on. And not only that, it's fantastic gear, and I think it's a great quality prices. Sorry, it's great quality at great prices is what I meant to say as well. I don't think you'll find better elsewhere. So yeah, that's KendoStar.com. It's Black Friday this week, and we've got a Black Friday sale happening right now. It's like really good. We've got like half price bug and stuff like that, so get over and have a look at that now, unless you're watching this in the future, in which case you missed your chance, so sorry about that. But if you're if you're still around Black Friday, get onto KendoStar.com and check out the deals that we've got for you. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.